At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Hey, it's Hannah. Again. So last year, we did an episode with the sound designer behind The Zone of Interest, which ended up winning the Oscar for Best Sound. We thought we'd do a similar episode with one of this year's nominated films, which is the bonus episode you're about to hear. Enjoy.
Hello, bonjour.
Guten Tag, Ujambo. Hola. Congratulations on your purchase of a Universal Dynamics robot.
That is the voice of Roz from the animated film The Wild Robot, up for 3 Oscars this weekend, including for Best Sound. Roz, who's voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, is a helper robot, a kind of turbocharged Siri, who gets stranded on a deserted island and learns to communicate with the animals that live there. She also finds a goose egg, the only one left after she accidentally destroyed its nest. And she decides that her task is to raise this gosling and basically become its mom. But that means she has to do all the parts of becoming a mom.
She doesn't. But she remembers one thing. You. And when she finally sees you, she feels...
Crushing obligation.
very lucky to be a mother.
This all created an interesting challenge for the movie's sound design team, which is, what should this robot sound like? And what should it sound like if it has a soul?
How do you know if you love something? Someone?
If you do, you should probably tell them.
What if it is too late?
This is Radio Atlantic. I'm Hannah Rosen. Today, we're talking about how a movie handles our complicated feelings about robots, with the guy who had to figure that out in sound.
My name is Randy Thom.
And who did it well enough to get an Oscar nomination.
And I'm the supervising sound designer on The Wild Robot.
There is a long history of robots in film. From him...
Here he comes.
To him...
Wally. Wally.
To her.
Hello, I'm here.
What do I call you? Do you have a name?
Yes. Samantha.
And Randy and the Wild Robot filmmakers knew they had to include some element of that classic robot feel for Roz's voice, like a little bit of monotone.
If I were to say, let me adjust this microphone, and then we decide we want to flatten it, it would be, let me adjust this microphone.
Ah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, so it's all kind of one note.
And then some extra processing in the voice.
As good an example as any would be C-3PO.
Can you speak Bocce? Of course I can, sir. It's like a second language to me. I'm as
all right, shut up. I'll take this.
Shut up, sir.
His voice, when C-3PO was speaking English, was processed, quite noticeably in terms of restricting its bandwidth, so it sounds a little bit like you're hearing it over a telephone. It doesn't have many, low frequencies in it or extremely high frequencies.
What makes you think there are settlements over there? Don't get technical with me. There's
this thing called audio phasing, where a signal, a sound gets combined with itself, but slightly out of sync with itself, and it makes this kind of swishing sound. And so a little bit of that is typically added to a voice to make it sound a little more like a robot.
I've just about had enough of you. Go that way. You'll be malfunctioning within a day, you nearsighted scrap pile.
By the way, Randy would know all of this because...
I'm the director of sound design at Skywalker Sound. Are you looking for that kind of title?
I mean, if you had that title, would you ever introduce yourself in any other way? Anyway, back to Roz and the Wild Robot.
One of the things that Gary Rizzo, the dialogue mixer on the film, did, I think, to very useful effect, was to dial up a reverberation algorithm that makes it sound like her voice is inside a metal container.
Congratulations on your purchase of a Universal Dynamics robot. I am Rosin7134.
And the effect of it, if you use it, that kind of processing subtly enough,
Congratulations on your purchase of a Universal Dynamics robot.
is that it feels like you're hearing her metallic body resonate when she speaks.
Whoa.
Dynamics robot. I am Rosin7134. A Rosin always completes its task. Just ask.
We did initially think that there might be quite a bit of robotizing of Lupita's voice. But the more we tried that, the more we realized that, we really need this character to express emotion. Because what's kind of going on in the story is that this robot develops a soul.
Can you explain again what we are doing?
I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. I don't know what I'm doing, and I have to. I have to because he's relying on me.
And so what you hear in the film is something that does sound very much like a robot for the first, 6 or 8 things that she utters.
Was this task accomplished to your satisfaction?
But then fairly quickly we dial out the processing, and so that what you're left with is Lupita's performance as a robot.
They cut my power, but I still heard you because I was listening with a different part of myself. Wherever that is.
Now, of course, Roz is not the only robot. You voiced a robot in Wild Robot. You play essentially the equivalent of a stormtrooper, like Muscle, the bad Muscle robot. How did you think about those robots differently?
Well, this is a case where my big bassy voice was useful. These are very large military robots, and so I just tried to manifest that as well as I could.
Your target is Rosin7134.
Deploy. But even my voice needed to be augmented to make it sound even bigger. And so I pitched my voice down almost an octave.
You do not belong here. This is a wilderness.
And put some of that kind of metallic reverberation on it.
You do not belong here. This is a wilderness.
And I just needed to perform it in as kind of aggressive and intimidating a way as I could muster.
Okay, give us one line. I'm trying to imagine your voice an octave deeper than I'm listening to.
Yeah, I won't be able to simulate that part of it. This is a wilderness. You do not belong here.
That was excellent. That was excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Already home, thank you.
You do not belong here. This is a wilderness.
And I am a wild robot.
When we come back, Randy has breakthrough.
Damn. That's going to work.
That is coming up.
Lowe's knows that free is just better. That's why MyLowe's Rewards is free to join. As a member, you earn points towards MyLowe's money on eligible purchases, get exclusive free gifts, and earn free shipping at Silver Key status, all on top of weekly member-only deals. Don't wait. Join MyLowe's Rewards for free today and start saving more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
TaxAct knows small business owners can sometimes use a little help with their taxes. That's why TaxAct has Expert Assist, a team of live tax experts ready to answer any questions you may have. Think of them as your own personal sidekick. Not like one of those funny talking animal sidekicks, more like the super smart nerding out on tax code and business casual attire sidekick, but just as helpful and lovable. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
So one thing Randy Thom had to figure out is what Roz's voice would sound like. But he also had to figure out how Roz would sound when she moved, like when she twisted her body or extended her arm and when she walked around.
The tradition for doing robot movement sounds for movies is to use recordings of servo motors. Servo motor is a kind of electric motor that's often used in robots. And the sound that it makes is when the robot walks is sort of sounds like that were used in the Star Wars films. R2-D2 really rolls rather than walks, but C-3PO is, kind of anthropomorphic, has arms and legs, and you hear servo motors when C-3PO walks.
He tricked me into going this way, but he'll do no better.
So, that approach had been done well, but at this point it seemed like a bit of a cliche, and so I wanted to stay away from it for that reason. But probably the more important reason I wanted to not use servo motors is that Roz is supposed to be very high-tech, so she had to sound elegant and smooth and subtle when she moved.
Rosms are programmed for instant physical mimicry,
So I started listening to pneumatic systems. And in a pneumatic system, air under pressure is used to propel certain kinds of things. And as I listened to those, I was thinking, wow, that's going to work. Something like that's going to work.
And what does a pneumatic system sound like? I actually tried to YouTube yesterday pneumatic systems because I saw you, and mostly what you see is video images, but I couldn't find one that had any kind of elegant sound,
Well, they're often something like that sort of thing.
Oh, that's what a pneumatic system is. It's like a tube going through a thing.
Yeah, if you can imagine a kind of cylinder being pushed through a tube that has air in it, and what you're hearing is sort of the air escaping around the edges of the cylinder inside the tube. It's like that. The more I listened to those sounds and, edited them in to be in sync with Roz's movements on the screen, the more it occurred to me that they were a little like breathing. Mm-hmm. So I decided to try, actual breath sounds, inhales and exhales, not for Roz breathing because she doesn't breathe, but for her movement sounds, for her walking. So every time she would take a step, you would hear this, that sort of thing. And so I performed some of the breaths.
Were they slow, like meditation yoga class breaths, or what kind of breath?
It depends a little on what she's doing. There's one moment early in the film where she reaches into a cave that a bear, who's voiced by Mark Hamill of Star Wars, by the way, she reaches into this cave and her arm has to extend quite a distance. I had to do a fairly long breath for that arm movement. So it was like, and I have to be careful that I don't, pass out doing that too much. But the trick, of course, is to do it subtly enough so that it doesn't literally sound like breathing. And so we don't want the audience to think, well, we're hearing her breathing as she's walking. It has to be quiet enough so that it's mostly subliminal.
You know what's philosophically, as you're talking, the symbolism of this, of breathing life into the robot, is very interesting.
Yeah, that's the little light bulb that got turned on in my head once I started listening to these breath sounds. So for me, it was probably the most fun activity that I had working on the film, figuring out a new kind of paradigm for robot movement.
In his past work, Randy has figured out sounds for much bigger and less, shall we say, aerodynamic kinds of robots, like the Iron Giant.
Well, I did use some servo sounds for the movement of the Iron Giant, which is an animated film.
See this? This is called a rock. Rock.
But I also used some hydraulic sounds for that giant robot.
Yes. No. That is a tree.
And early in his career, Randy also helped to come up with the sound for an even bigger kind of robot, which he found in recordings of a huge metal shear. Think like a metal guillotine.
And it made this really great multi-syllabic syncopated sound. So it made this sort of and that's the sound that the Imperial walkers make in The Empire Strikes Back.
Echo Station 3T8.
We have spotted Imperial walkers.
Imperial walkers on the North Ridge.
So you're moving essentially from something that is metallic to something that's a little more organic to something that feels fairly human-like. Like that does feel like an evolution.
Yeah, I think it is.
Do you have a sense now after working on Wild Robot what an ideal robot would sound like? Like, do you think we could ever go back to the days when robots sounded metallic? Or are we just living in a world where our expectation is that robots have a humanish feel of some kind?
I don't think we're there yet. It depends in movies, of course. So if you see a robot in Her.
Was that funny?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm funny.
Then you certainly don't expect to hear, servo motors. But if there's a kind of retro look to the robot, then I can certainly imagine a movie, being made next year where it would be appropriate to, go back to servo motors.
Right. So we're not firmly in the era of the humanoid robot. Who knows how it could go?
Yeah.
We could start having nostalgia for the robot as we knew it.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah, one day.
And you're having to lose the grandeur.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for explaining this so patiently. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Nice to talk with you.
This episode of Radio Atlantic was produced by Janae West and edited by Claudine Abade. It was engineered by Rob Smirciak and fact-checked by Genevieve Finn. Claudine Abade is the executive producer of Atlantic Audio, and Andrea Valdez is our managing editor. I'm Hannah Rosen. Thank you for listening.